Hello and welcome to the Repurpose Your Purpose podcast. My name is AURORA MENEGHELLO and I am your host. This podcast is all about finding work you love, doing work you love, and growing organizations you love. So I am excited today to have with me Mala Sheshadri. Hi, Mala.
Hey, Aurora.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Before I ask you all my questions, I want to tell everybody a little bit about you, okay? So, one moment, and here we go. Mala Sheshadri has over 17 years of expertise in recruiting tech professionals. Her ability to recruit hard to find tech talent in a competitive market and her in depth understanding of work based immigration policies and trends make her a great partner to tech managers in their current and future hiring strategies. Working at Kforce, one of the largest technology staffing companies in the US, gives Mala the visibility to opportunities and hiring trends nationwide, which in turn help her accurately counsel the job seekers in the search process, right from putting together an impressive resume all the way to salary negotiations and onboarding. And I know you're great at this because your LinkedIn reviews are just rave about you. So I'm so excited to have you here today.
I'm excited to be here, Aurora. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so here's my first question for you. I've always been curious, like, what is the life of a recruiter? Like, what is it like to be a recruiter behind the scenes?
Wow. Okay. Busy, lots of calls, lots. I mean, if you don't like to talk to people, you cannot be a recruiter. If you don't like to see through resumes and, genuinely help, you cannot be a recruiter. You need to genuinely want to do that connection, saying, you're good at this. Here's what I have open. Let me help you. That should be your innate calling. If you don't have that, you cannot be a recruiter.
Hmm.
But it's very fulfilling, right? So for me, I love it. I love talking to different people, different walks of life. What they're trying to do, where they want to get to. It's very fulfilling, and especially when someone gets that dream job, lands that dream job, and you've been instrumental in the process. It's very, very rewarding, right? You feel good at the end of the day. So it's one of those jobs which gives you a lot of satisfaction, but it can be like I said, if you don't have a calling, if you don't have a passion, it can bring you down. Like, because it's people, right? Like you will have worked with this people, like if you, let's say a candidate or a client for a long time and it just doesn't work out, right? What do? You brush up, dust up, move on, do it all over again, right? So it's pretty much it. So
Wow.
it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding work.
One thing that fascinated me about learning more about you is that you really help job seekers, I'm sorry, from beginning to end, right?
Hmm.
So can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think sometimes we don't quite realize how different recruiters work.
Right, right. Well, I mean, yeah, like you aptly said, I work with them from beginning to end. So right from a moment somebody calls me and says, Mala, I'm in the job market. I'm looking, I need an opportunity. It literally starts from them, right? Understanding what they do, where they come from, what they're looking for, right? And finding something that aligns with them, not just from their, the most basic variables, but also from their career aspirations perspective, right? Because it's at the end of the day, a career. You're trying to build and grow in an opportunity, in a position. So it's solely on the relationship that a recruiter builds with a candidate, and then it kind of takes on morphs into a different whole equation thereon. So it could
Mm.
start, some people have no idea of, hey, how should my resume look? Um, have it read. So it's again, it's very consultative at the initial stages. And the more you open up, just like how you would to a doctor or a lawyer, right? You open up to a recruiter and say, here's like really what I'm looking for. And that's exactly when a recruiter can actually understand what your needs are and then kind of work with you from there on. And then how much you leverage them is totally up to you, right? Like if you don't ask the right questions, say, hey, Mala, what kind of questions can I expect? How do I answer this question? Or I've had this situation in the past. How do you think I should handle it? Like, things like that. Um, I mean, of course, sometimes I dig and ask those questions, say, hey, how long have you been looking? What seems to be the challenge? But sometimes, recruiters may or may not ask those questions, but it's up to you to kind of leverage that knowledge that the other person brings to the table, in this case, a recruiter, and then use that tool to further your job search. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah. How do you find your candidates? Do you find them or do they find you?
Both. Sometimes I have to go finding them and keep knocking, like, sourcing, networking, like, who do you know? Things like that. And of course, a lot of times it's also word of mouth, right? And typically when you have success with someone and they really know what the value that you bring to the table, the word of mouth is quite extensive. I mean, people talk about you. People say, hey, you're looking okay. Hey, people innately, I think that's the human nature, right? Like you want to help, right? Like, so if somebody is looking for a job and you were in that situation not so long ago and someone helped you, you're like, oh my God, yeah, I know just the person for you, right? So that happens quite a bit as well. But of course, there are positions that are really specific, and not many people are out there with those skills. That's when we actually have to wear the headhunter hat on and then look and then call, speak to many people, and then do the digging.
So, what are some of the positions you usually recruit for?
Well, I've been mostly in the tech space, right? So anything to do with information technology, the life cycle of IT applications, right? Right from like, architecting, developing, business analysis, project management, any aspect of an IT project is where I could probably fit in, right?
Mm.
So be it a team that's looking to bring someone on to help them at any particular phase of that project, or be it someone that's looking to find a position, to fit into that team, yeah, that's where I come in.
So I am curious because, as you know, I work quite a bit with people who want to change careers. I usually work with them before they know what they want to do. um, but like sometimes people they don't know what they want to do and so forth, or they find that they want to do something new and they're afraid of this, like looking for a job, as career changers. So I am curious from your perspective, given especially the times we live in right now, which is a lot of disruption, a lot of new technology, a lot of changes. I don't know when this particular episode here of the podcast will be published, but we're right now just a few weeks from a lot of layoffs in technology, all this kind of. So I think there's extra worry that people sometimes have. Can you explain a little bit how it works with career changers in particular, people that want to make a change?
Right. That's a great question, Aurora. I definitely do want to add, to that. The most important aspect of a career change is, what's your motive? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Why are you changing careers? What is it that you're looking for, right? You need to know your North Star, right? Like, what drives it, right? And once you know it, just like as with any new venture, right? It could start with like you know, okay, this is my motto, this is my goal, this is what I want to accomplish, and then working towards doing research, researching the role. Okay, so I want to be in IT, but what in IT, right? Like I want to do, let's say, business analysis, or like, oh, I want to be a data analyst. Why? What about that excites you, right? And what relevant skills do you have towards it? Or if you don't have anything, finding out more about what does the job entail? Will it really fulfill what I'm seeking, right? And what do I need to have from a skill set perspective, from a tools perspective? What do I need to have? Things like that. So doing the research, getting equipped with the tools and the skills and how to impact it. And then asking questions, right? Networking with others that are currently doing that job and saying, hey, what are some of the pros and the cons? What is, and using that network to get a lot more information on that is like literally the groundwork, right? That would be the first thing that you need to do. And then everything else will fall into place. When you know what you want, it's easier for you to go after it,
Mhm.
right? So that's the most important thing. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yeah,
yeah, that's
actually, I feel very validated because that's part of what I always say, right? You gotta do your
okay.
research, you gotta like, so
Yeah,
that's a lot of the work that I don't know if you know this or people listening to this right now, but the reason why I decided to really help people change careers who are not sure what they want to do next is because I felt when I was going through that process, that was the hard part. Like
right,
when I knew what I wanted, way easier, right? But then I feel like, yeah, what you're saying is a lot of what I share as well. That like if you know what you want, then it also becomes common sense. When are you ready for it,
right.
right?
And why
And
you want it. Like, people may just say, oh, you know what, I'm just bored. I want to do something else. Or if that looks easier than what I do right now, what I'm doing right now. Or that's paying a lot more money than what I'm getting paid. Yes, it is a valid reason, but money should not always be the reason, because that's not it, it could satisfy you momentarily, but then if you're innately not qualified or passionate about that, that's just going to be like another venture that you pick up and then you just drop. Like, you don't want that.
yeah. Okay, so here's what I'm curious about from your perspective as a recruiter. Okay.
Mhm.
Is it different when you work with career changers versus regular candidates?
Great question. Yeah, yes, it is different. The cycle is a lot longer with career changers than with people that perhaps are continuing in the same field and just looking for a different job, right? And here's why. I work for a recruiting agency, right? And when a hiring manager has an opening, he or she would reach out to a recruiting agency or a recruiter per se to help bring in the consultative approach. Say, hey, I have this gap, this opening, and I need this person to come in and help the team move things along, right? So they may not have the bandwidth or the time to bring someone in that's kind of brand new to the position and then teach them the ropes, right? Um, and those jobs are there, like the entry level positions are there, and they're advertised perhaps directly through the companies. They don't really leverage a recruiting agency for that per se. So career changers have to be very patient. They have to be very detailed in terms of their job search, like, apply multiple places, check out different job boards, different companies and whatnot, right? And I can dig a little more, on that aspect as to what all they can do. But for the sake of time, I'd say it's very different. If career changers are working with a recruiter, they need to know that those cycles probably going to be a lot longer.
Mm.
And I always think that it's usually better to have something that you're currently, if you're working in something, if you're doing something, but you want to change your career, don't say, okay, I'm going to stop working and then going to look. Keep it going. It should be a
Mm.
concurrent process, because you don't want to be without a paycheck. I mean, of course, that's my take on it, right? Some people, if you have the financial ability to kind of say, you know what, I'm going to just cruise it out and then focus completely on this new career change, then more power to you. But otherwise, I'd say do what you're doing, be patient, work on building your skills, right? Like if you want to, it's a completely new skill, new career, new path for you, then work on getting certified, work on taking up courses, work on doing projects on the side, build your portfolio, right? And then slowly continue working with a recruiter and then mushroom it into
Hmm.
something bigger. That's the best way to go about it.
You said so much in there. I kind of wanna tease some stuff apart and see how you feel about some of my thoughts. I'm curious.
Yeah.
One of the things that so there's many different types of career changers, right? So some people might choose to go into something completely new and have to start maybe not super entry level, but let's say like, okay, you're gonna have to learn a lot on the job, right? There's
Hmm.
also career changers that, yeah, like you said, they might take time to learn new things and build up the skills and maybe even build, with a side hustle or something, right? And then it's a
Hmm.
different game getting
Hmm.
in. And then there's also career changers where they're changing more like I still call them career changers, but maybe they're changing more like the field,
Hmm.
so they have the technical skills, but maybe in a different industry. So would
Domain, you
imagine,
mean? A different domain, maybe
yeah.
healthcare to a, yeah, okay. Hmm.
Yeah, so I would think that's also a different thing because that is not like you have to learn from scratch.
Oh,
Then it's
yeah.
more like
Hmm.
maybe telling your story or
Hmm.
making sure
Hmm.
you're catching up on
Hmm.
some things.
Hmm. Hmm.
But the other thing that I think it was really important that you pointed out to is that, well, if a company goes to a recruiting agency, they're looking for, they either have a problem feeling that or in any way they want something stable and they're less risk averse. Well, I
Hmm.
feel like if you really want to change careers and you're looking for something that's a little bit that will give you a chance, okay, then maybe person to person, get to know people, smaller
Yes.
company, that kind of stuff, or
Hmm.
maybe starting doing your own thing for a while. That's a more realistic and also maybe more exciting for some people
Yeah.
path.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And the other thing that I think is good to remember is that, so I really like how you said, you have to talk to people, you have to get to know people, you have to understand the industry you're going in, the why, right?
Yeah.
When you understand all that, you can use your common sense. Like, does it make sense for me to work with a recruiter? Does it make sense for me to take a certain leap? Does it make
Hmm.
sense to me to go back to school? Like, I think the more we can take it as impersonal and practical, without getting sucked in our own insecurity, the more we can use our common sense. And
Yeah.
so you're a career changer or not, well, the job is the same. Somebody's got to do it. Can you do it or not?
True.
Yeah.
True. Very much.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I have so many things I want to ask you. Let me see what else I want to ask you. Okay. So here's something I am curious about, and I want to have a conversation because when I work with clients, whether they're like employees or they're leaders, because I also work sometimes with people in management or nonprofit leaders, things like that, right? The personal relationships, the professional relationships, people to people at work are so important,
Hmm.
right? So important.
Hmm.
So I'm curious to hear a little bit about your take on what do you see as far as communication? Maybe some skills that you think people would really benefit in paying more attention to, or maybe something else that you think too, like, yeah, I see this pattern, it's really important, this aspect of communication, or maybe, yeah, communication, I would say, or relationships at work.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's very important to have that the connection with the people that you work, right? Um, because if you take on an average, or if somebody works for 25 years, right, of their adult lives, they're spending 52,000 hours, working. That's the amount of time that they'd spend working just based on a 40-hour work week, right? And it's so important to have that connection with the people that you are working with, the things that you're doing at work, right? And so that being said, establishing that, so culture is super important. So that becomes the most important aspect of a job, right? Like, how are the people? What's the culture like? Is it friendly? Is it like, does it resonate with me? Do I like it here? So it's very personal. It's very, people like to I've read, and I'm sure you've read it too. People leave people, people don't leave
Mm-hmm.
jobs,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it is at the end of the day. So um, and now more than ever, and I think after COVID, I think communication perhaps became a lot more important. And when I say communication, there obviously, it's such a vast topic, right? I mean, you have the interpersonal skills, right? When your body language can be a way you communicate,
Mm.
right? Like, but when things have been remote and virtual, all of that kind of morphs into a totally different way. Like, how do you pick up the phone and talk to someone, or do you just like answer via email or text someone, right? And different generations operate differently from that perspective. I think the more younger generations, they basically want to text, and they don't want to like pick up a phone call, like, but for me, I'm all about like, hey, I want to talk about this, let me just pick up the phone call and just call. So understanding, and if not one, neither is right or wrong, right? So you just need to figure out what works for you, number one, and number two, what kind of a setup you're in, right? Like, and gauge the people that you work with, and then accordingly work with them, right? Like, so if the team is more in person, then you want to be there, you want to contribute to it. But if it's virtual, then making sure that, you communicate saying, hey, I was responsible for this task, I've completed it. Is there anything else I can do? Or, hey, I saw you sent this thing, I got it, thank you so much, things like that. Like,
Mm.
over communicating in a virtual setup is super important, just to
Mm.
make sure that you're all on the same page. I don't know if I answered the question, but
Yeah, there's a lot of things. Wow. The the first thing is like, and it goes back to some of what you were saying about talking to people, and you probably, I can imagine you help with this as well in your role, is like you need to pick the team that already has a work culture that's a good fit for you.
hmm
Like for example, some of us are very collaborative and some of us are not very collaborative.
hmm
Some of us like teams where people are a little bit more sharing their feeling and how they're doing, and some of us are like, I really don't want to talk about my feelings ever.
right,
Right?
right.
And I think, like, again, there's not, unless we get into really bad toxic environments, like there's no right or wrong. I mean, we're all different, and it's good to sort of go with yourself a little bit, what feels right, what will
True,
put you from the beginning, right?
true. And that's the whole point of interviews, right? Like, where you actually understand the team, know the team, or at least get to know the team. That's one of the biggest takeaways of an interview. If culture and communication wasn't as important, then people would just hire based on the resume. If you have a great resume, great, you're hired. That would make my life so much more easier. It would be like, well, okay, great. But it's not, right? It's all about, people. Like, how do you answer, how do you like, and people are different. Like, you could be an introvert, but a great, like, if somebody gets to know you, you'd be like an amazing team player, or you may hit it off well. But so again, working with someone like a recruiter or someone, a mentor, saying, okay, that someone that knows you, to say, okay, I have this interview, this is what I'm looking for. What do I say? How do I say? Things like that would be super important.
Yeah, I think also because, I just had this thought, hear you talk about this, that our ability to even utilize our skills at the best of our capacity a lot of time also depends on these interpersonal things, meaning if
Hmm.
you are feeling uncomfortable at work all the time, or if you lack a certain kind of direction or communication from the other people, like you might not even be able to shine, right,
Yeah,
as much.
I agree.
So there's first the picking, of course, like knowing yourself, so you can recognize more easily and look for more easily for what would be a good fit, but also then learning how to be better at different types of situations. And I love that you mentioned over communication. I think over communication in general is a good idea, but remotely, yeah.
Yeah.
How are we gonna know if we don't know, right?
Exactly. Very much. Very much. And I think it's as people mature into their careers, it's so important to understand that, hey, people don't know me as in me as a person. And you don't need to be best friends with people that you work with. You just need to get along well enough to be able to enjoy what you do and be happy, right? Have a fulfilling experience. You don't need to necessarily have a best friend at work, that's not what you're looking for. But for even that to happen, you need to make sure that you don't really necessarily have a wall. People will not
Mhm.
know you. You need to be approachable. So morphing a few things. I mean, people change. People need to change. It's important to mirror. It's important to, say, okay, I some of the things are really close to you, right? Like your principles and your nature and stuff like that. But other aspects of it, right? I typically don't say this, but you know what? I'm gonna because it helps, because it's a more socially accepted thing. I'm gonna be okay with it. So
Mm.
getting to that point is also a learning experience. So that's
Mm.
again something that perhaps you can talk to a mentor or a recruiter or a career counselor to say, okay, how do I get there? Like, what do I do? You know,
I wonder if some of this also we think extra about because we're both from a different place.
to,
Right? So, like, I'm from Italy, and even though I've been here for a long time, you just the way you go through school and get socialized when you're young, you pick up all sorts of things, of ways of being, and you don't even
very
realize
much.
sometimes the assumptions you have. Yeah, I was wondering if you want to share a little bit, if you have some thoughts on this, because I feel like I've been thinking a lot about this for 20 plus years.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, great question. I think it is true because coming from India, I think differently. Like, obviously people say that you first start thinking in your native tongue, right? Like your mother tongue. That's what you think in when somebody asks you a question, right? That becomes second nature. Because I grew up in India and I came here, been here a long time, but I still go back to my roots, right? Um, so that's a big, big thing for immigrants, right? Like when they come here, um, first of all, languages are different, but still, I mean, now we're a global village. Everybody, I think, speaks English, and is the communication is no more a huge drawback, at least in IT, let's say, right? If that has not been an issue, but let's say other aspect of it, like uh, what the norms, like what's acceptable, what's not, what do you say, what you don't, could lead to misunderstandings at work, right? And so for immigrants, that in itself is a learning curve, just to understand, okay, oh, here, this is how they do it. Oh, okay, this is how not to do it. This is what to say, things like that. So that becomes a big piece. And the other thing that I think immigrant workers could face is lack of network, right?
Mm.
You don't have, be it social or professional, right? If you haven't gone to school here, you don't really have your buddies to kind of back you up when you're having a bad day and you have a time difference, right? You can't call them middle of the night and say, hey, I'm having a bad day. Do you have like a minute? You can't do that. Which people that are like native to this country would probably will never understand that, right? Not having family, not having close friends that you have been raised with who think like you, that's another big thing. So building that social network becomes another challenge that they will have to navigate with finding a new job, with adapting to the workplace. That is an additional burden on them, right? And then, of course, and we hear about it a lot, right? DEI, like inclusion is such a big deal. Um, but a lot of, and now thanks to the labor laws, the discrimination is definitely not as evident as it used to be back in the day, but it still probably happens, like subconsciously sometimes, right? Say, oh, maybe this person has an accent. Oh, maybe this
Mm.
person may not be able to do that. So before they even get to an interview stage. So subconscious bias, right? So that's something that happens a lot too. Um, if you like have, a descent that's not native to the country that you're living in, that's something that you could face as well. And then another thing that I always also see is overqualification or underemployment, right? Meaning you are way overqualified, but because you don't have a job, you end up taking something that's like far beneath what you've probably studied for, just to kind of make sure you have a job. I've seen that happen a lot, right? Just to kind of get a break, which is not a bad thing. But then, how do you grow from there if you don't have a path or if you don't have a network or support system to kind of get you out of that situation? You can get stuck in that situation for a very long time. That's another drawback, right? So it is tough, but it's very fulfilling. I think when you go through all these hardships, it makes you stronger. Personally, it takes a lot to beat you down and keep you down if you have struggled and come up. You know what I mean? So it's makes you more resilient.
There are so many things. I want to have a podcast episode on every single point you made there. I want to like sort of piggyback on a couple, especially. One is that here's what it took me over a decade to figure out that when you come from another country, you are already by default more aware that there's
Hmm.
gonna be some miscommunication. And
Hmm.
and even that, I think you still don't understand because, for example, like I think I used to get in trouble when I first moved a lot is that in Italy we have a different concept of how close you stand with people. So I can't
Hmm.
tell you how many times at the beginning, the first few months, I had very awkward interactions because I didn't quite understand until somebody pointed it out to me, I didn't understand what was going on, right? So but still like I still had an understanding of okay, what do I not know here? Like I don't know how to do things, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I
Oh
think
my
the
gosh, there are so many. Like you said, we probably have to have a different podcast to kind of talk
right.
about it. It's funny, till date, I still mix up my V's and W's, because and my daughter teases me about that. She's like, "What did you say?" So,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
funny, but it's
Yeah, I know there's one. But I think what I didn't realize for the longest time is that if somebody has not had an experience of living in a different culture, in a different country, not going on vacation, I mean, like you live there, that they don't even understand what's going on at another level. I don't even know how to say this. Like that, it took me over a decade to understand. Oh wow, like that's not even a thing in the direction to look into. So one thing that if anybody is listening to this, like if if you're from here and you've never actually lived somewhere else, like ask your friends who come from somewhere else, like have some conversations about that, because I promise you, you don't even know some of the things that are different, and you're completely blind to it, right? So that's so important. And then
Very.
I came here by myself. So it really touched my heart when you said you're here, you don't know, because there's not just the people you don't know, but also we have all sorts of ways to comfort ourselves. I
Right.
mean, now at least like you can watch movies in different language, so much is more available
True.
online. When I
True.
was, when I came here, not at all. But still, like even the food you find, the way you go out, all sorts of things. So I feel like it's so important to like from the get-go try to find some community, even if it's just one person. And
Yeah.
when I moved to LA, I didn't know any Italians, but I met somebody from a different culture that we could bond on that. We're both here from different cultures, right? And
True.
she's actually the one that explained to me about the way you're standing too close to people, because she had made the same mistake. She was like, I know what's going on, right? So, but I think all of these, it's sort of like the immigrant experience is like the maybe the top of the miscommunication,
Yeah,
thing.
I
um
agree.
but it's the same
I'm
thing even like introverts, extroverts. There's many little differences that will
yeah.
trip us up in that miscommunication.
Yeah, culturally too. I mean, people aren't as like outgoing and hey, how's it going? It's very relaxed, the work culture here versus let's say in India's now I think of course everything is changing thanks to MNCs and like I said, global village, but there we go. Village. V's and W's, I still mix them up. Anyways, global village. But it's like it's very apparent. Like the differences are very different, apparent. Like the way you're brought up culturally made a difference. At least I want to say till 2010. After 2010, I feel like things have changed so much, so
Mm,
much. Thanks to the advent of social media and everything. I think
mm,
it's kind of the differences are becoming lesser and lesser. People understand saying, okay, this is how you say it, this is how you do,
mm.
and whatnot.
That's so interesting. Okay, wow. I want to talk about so many more things. All right, let me see
We'll
what
have
else.
another we'll have another session for
I
that.
know, another episode. Um, all right. Okay. Oh, I know though before. No, I do want to follow up about another thing that you said actually because I thought it was so important. Because you said about the choosing jobs, then you're overqualified, and then you choose a position that's less
Hmm.
than what. So I have some thoughts about that. I'm curious what if you have some tips for people that, to sort of like deal with that situation, either to avoid it or maybe to sort of like deal with it once they're in it.
Hmm. um as in getting into a position and how do you come out of it, or
Yeah, or even maybe to catch yourself before doing that. Yeah, something, because I think you made a really important, like that's really important actually. Like I don't want to just like leave it to that little bit, I feel like is there
right.
something else we can offer?
Yeah, absolutely. And that could be one of the tips, right? Like for career changes or people that are looking for a job. And if they're not able to find something that, that they are, let's say, that they need to get into or they are qualified to get into, then, it's okay to look at a stopgap arrangement just to kind of keep things going. Again, like I said, not everybody will have the luxury of saying, oh, I'm getting my paycheck, I don't have to worry about this, I'll just go ahead and look for the stuff that I want. People may have obligations, financial obligations, family obligations, that they need to find something to kind of keep things going. So it's definitely not wrong or bad to take something up as a stopgap, but it's important to not get complacent. saying, okay, and get like stuck into it, right? Like having a goal and saying, okay, this is my goal. I'm going to have like a vision board. I'm going to do this. This is just my current situation, but I'm going to work towards this. I'm going to continue to, work towards getting that dream job that I want to and I'm qualified for. Be it like, okay, I'm going to have, um, like I know in India, like, you have 3-year degrees, and of course, if it's engineering, it's 4 years, but sometimes bachelor's of science is like, after high school is a 3-year degree, or they call it degree, but here it's a diploma, right? But you have your, let's say when they file for H1s, like, or the immigration visas, I mean, they go through something called as the educational evaluation. There are companies that evaluate and give you an equivalent
Mm.
degree out here, or like a document which says this equates to this here in the US, right?
Mm.
So things like that. And then you can add to it. You can do additional courses maybe in a community college or things like that to kind of add it and make it to a 4-year degree, things like that. So there are avenues. Again, it's a lot of research, Aurora. You cannot have, like, if somebody wants it, they have to work for it. It's not going to be easy. Right. Work. And when I say work for it, you don't have to like do it all on your own. You have to build a network, build like, the community from a professional perspective, have a mentor, people that, that are currently doing the same job, or like working with a recruiter, or, agencies that specialize in the kind of work that you want to do. So those resources are out there for you to leverage, and you have to put in the work to get it. And if the stopgap arrangement that you're currently at is like taking time away, 40 hours a week, make use of the weekend, make use of the evenings. You have to go above and beyond to kind of get out of that situation. Otherwise, you can get stuck. And before you know it, 5 years you're doing the same thing, and then you send your resume to a recruiter. They're like, what were you doing for 5 years? That's a long time, right?
Yeah. Now we're so in alignment on this. I always say like it's okay if you while you're changing careers, you need to take something, have the money job.
Yeah,
Like we've all had to
yeah,
do
yeah,
that.
yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
just don't forget that's the money
Yes.
job.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
start
yeah,
getting
yeah.
confused that now that's what you're doing. Like, no,
True.
that was supposed to be the in between. Let's stay the
Yep.
course, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is so wow. Okay, all right. Well, I want to ask you something because I mentioned it before, and again, I don't know when this episode will be published. So, but right now we're dealing with technology layoffs, with a lot of uncertainty, and whether I put this episode out, a couple of weeks from now or a few months from now, like still, like these things happen, right? It's
Mhm.
not gonna happen just once in our lifetime. So, what are some of your best tips for dealing with a job search if you're a job seeker right now? Given that it's not the best market.
Right. Okay. So I have quite a few actually, so I'm gonna I'm
Go
gonna
for
jump
it.
right
Go
in.
for it. Yeah.
Right. First and foremost is updating your resume and LinkedIn profile, right? I cannot tell you how many times I get resumes from candidates that just aren't, it feels like, they haven't taken the time to put it together, right? Um, I've, believe it or not, I have actually seen spelling mistakes for candidates on resumes, from candidates that apply for opportunities for QA jobs or BA job. I'm like, QA is quality analysis. I mean, quality, like you have to catch the bugs, and if you can't catch typos, I mean, it reflects poorly on your candidature, right? Like it's so important. BAs are like business analysts. They are supposed to write documentation. That's their job, right? Like communication is their job. So if you cannot communicate, make sure that your resume reads accurately. Your resume is free of typos. then it reflects poorly on you. So resume is literally your step in, and you have to take the time to work on it. There's so many resources available out there that you can leverage, right? To get a resume in place. I actually put up a nice little masterclass on resume writing on my LinkedIn post a few days ago. But yes, I mean, there are so many resources out there for candidates to kind of get their resume in. So that's the most important thing that they need to do. Get a resume going, right? And then LinkedIn. LinkedIn is like your personal billboard. If you haven't leveraged that tool, then you're just wasting it away. Because more than ever now, hiring managers are logging into LinkedIn, making sure that just to kind of get a feel for the candidate before he or she gets on an interview with the candidate, right? So getting your LinkedIn page up to date, right? Like making sure that it's personable, getting a picture on it, right? Like it makes it more human. Like, some of the LinkedIn profiles that I still come across don't have any picture because they want to keep it like private. I understand, but unfortunately, times have changed. You have to change with the time. I'm not asking you to post your family vacation picture, but just like a profile picture of your professional self, just to make sure that people can, it is important. I mean, will it make a difference? Should it make a difference? No, it should not, because that's against the labor laws and how it's supposed to be. But it helps, to kind of put you through as like, okay, here's another human, right? So that's important. And then another super important thing that people don't leverage is recommendations, right? If you have worked and if you have work experience and you hopefully have at least a few people to say good things about you, have them take a few minutes to write your recommendation, specifically calling out your ability to do your job well, right? That's again free advertisement for your capabilities, right? So it's so important to get these are the basics, and this is like literally 50% of the job, right? Like, because the resume, like, people already, it's called subconscious decisions, right? Like you automatically say, oh yeah, this looks good. Oh yeah, that's great. This recommendation sounds good. So when the hiring manager is going into the interview, he already has like a positive outlook towards your profile, right? Versus probably having another candidate with no, recommendations or pictures or anything. There's not necessarily any positives there, neither negatives, but it's always additional help. So that's point number one, right? Next is tailoring your application. Like, you're applying, if you're not working with a recruiter, especially when you're not working with a recruiter and you're applying online, tailoring your application to the opportunity is super important, right? Because the recruiter that's on the other side looking at your resume, trust me, this, like you aptly said, to so many candidates, it's a really candidate. There's so many candidates out there. They're like, it literally in 1 hour, we receive about 600 applications for a
Mhm.
functional role, like literally in 1 hour. I'm not kidding, Aurora. And I see that a lot of the candidates tell me this, and oh my God, I saw that job. There were so many applicants. I'm like, yes, unfortunately, that's the way it is. So how do you stand out? Like, make sure that number one, if you've worked with something, make sure it's on your resume. Do not misrepresent yourself, because that's the big no-no, right? A lot of the times people will have there'll be a skill, and I'm like, hey, can you tell me where you worked with this? Like, oh, actually, I did not work with it. It was I touched upon it. It was in the environment. We used it
Mm.
as a company. I'm like, no, actually, if you haven't worked with it for at least 6 months to 8 months, if you cannot answer at least 6 to 8 questions on that particular subject, do not put it on the resume, because that's going to obviously trigger an alarm in the hiring manager's mind saying, okay, this person, if he or she asks you a question, you give that answer, they're like, hmm, will this person have all the other skills that he or she
Right.
has mentioned? They don't have the time to go through each one of them. That's a red flag, right? So it's going to go against you. So super important to have your resume reflect only what you've done, reflect how you align to the job, right? Tailor your resume, bring out those bullets. They don't have more than a few seconds on the first page. So you shouldn't have like a 10-page resume. So again, this can be another podcast with how to write your resume, right?
Mm,
So that's tailoring applications super important. Third one, network with uh, recruiters, network with your old colleagues, old bosses. Hey, do you know anyone that's hiring? Like, getting your name out there, super important. Like, getting them to know that you're looking for a job and that you're available. Very, very important. Have them help you, right? So that's something that you need to do. And you need to work with a recruiter that you can trust and help you drive this process.
mm,
Because it can be daunting, like looking for a job can be daunting. Utilizing the next one is utilizing online job boards, right? Again, you can set up alerts on different job boards, Career Builder, Monster, Indeed, whatever you choose, like LinkedIn too. I mean, you can actually create alerts and say, whenever something opens up with these technologies or skills, I'd like to receive an email. And then it's easier. It does the searching for you. So that is one thing. And then researching the kind of companies that you want to join, right? Like, okay, everybody has a dream job, a dream company, right? Like leveraging the technology that I mean, I would have said Google it, Google other companies that now you can chat GPT it, or whatever your wishes in terms of an AI tool. You can just basically search for companies that have hire for similar skills and research them, apply proactively, say, make sure you're in their database, because a lot of the companies will go back to their database and check if any applicants are available and that are a match. So, again, will it be the solution? No, it can help, it can add. And I think that that's supposed to be something that they need to do. Preparing for interviews, that's another thing that they need to do. Because right now, with so many applicants, if you get an interview, it's a great thing. But I cannot tell you how many times that, somebody says, oh my God, I've been looking for a long time. I haven't gotten a job, and then we end up getting an interview, and then they unfortunately don't get it, right, because of
yeah.
not preparing for it,
Mm.
or
Well,
so
I have a question because you said 600 applications per hour, but how many of those applications even follow all the steps correctly and
not
are being
many,
targeted? Right. So
not many.
I
And
think this
again,
is really
and
important.
unfortunately, Aurora, recruiters don't have the time to go through 600 applicants. They don't. So you know what they do? They
No.
go back to the network that they've built. They go back to the
Mm,
people that they have spoken to, which is
mm,
why it's important to network with recruiters and be on the, like, be in touch with them, stay on the top of their
mm,
mind, say, hey, we spoke. Have you found anything for me? Because
mm,
today, if I get a job, let's say a project manager position, I am not going to go back to my job board and see like, who's applied. I'm going to go back and see, okay, who did I speak to in the last, let's say, 1 month? How many project managers have I spoken to? Let me go back to them and see if they're available, see if they
mm.
align with what I have. Unless it's like something very specific, like, they need to have this XYZ skill with this ABC documentation, blah, blah, blah. I am not going to go back to the job board. I'm going, if it's, so
Yeah.
that's the truth.
I I just want to point out a couple of things because I think this is something important to point out. One is that this idea that people like, how can I say, it's easier than ever now to apply to a lot of places because click, 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 right? Kind of thing. Um, First of all, it's a waste of your time. I think if you do that, not yours even as a recruiter. I mean, like as a job seeker, like you're better
Hmm.
off putting more time in a few applications than doing that.
Yeah,
Second is like, do not underestimate how much other people are doing that and their applications don't look very good. And so you can still set yourself apart. Now, you're saying sometimes people might not even go through the applications, but sometimes they do, right? And it's very
yeah,
clear who is really applying for that job intentionally and enthusiastically and who is just putting in, a million applications.
true, true, very much, very
But
much.
but to your point also about people going through their network, I think sometimes when people hear it, they hear it in like in a negative way, like, oh, they're not looking, it's just who they know. But actually what I've really seen is that it's always scary for everybody, even people hiring, right? Is this person honest? Can this person
Hmm.
do the job? Is this person somebody that is gonna be pleasant, for 8 hours a day? Like, we're all gonna have a good time working together. So it's just very human to say, like, okay, who do I know that can do the job? Or where have I seen a good candidate? And I think it's really important to take it like that, that ultimately we're all trying to build a good organization and find good jobs, and it just makes sense that the first thing we think about is somebody we know that can do the job well. So I think that's
Correct.
really important, because it's true even in business, right? If I have a doctor I like, I keep going to the same doctor. I don't go, right? And if somebody asks me, do you know a doctor? I'll tell them about the doctor I like that is good, right? Like, I
Correct.
mean, so this is why also another thing that I think is very important, like right now, even if you're not looking for a job, you love your job, great, all good. The way you build the relationships in your current position and the kind of quality of what you deliver in the current position, whether you like it or not, whether it's your career forever or not, whatever, like pays dividends later.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing that I've seen with career changers, that even when somebody, like let's say a person changes careers or changes field, right? If you've always been a great person to work with, you were good at what you were doing, people could trust you, they will more readily make a connection or be open to your change because it's that basis of trust and they know you can deliver, rather than somebody that gets in a bad mood or gets really discouraged or gets very defensive or all these things, which by the way I've done all these things, everybody, so it's like no judgment. We've all been there. But then you missed opportunities of people that could have trusted you and appreciated you and would have been there for you even when you changed. So I just want to put it out there because I feel like sometimes we almost see quote unquote the other side as trying to do things, but a lot of the time it's just very like, okay, I now have to fill this position. Um, I need to find somebody that's gonna work for me. What am I gonna do? Just like the doctor, the first thing that makes sense, it's like, oh, hey, do you know anybody who's like good at this? It's a very, I think it's just very routine. It's not as much thought about as maybe we think.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So it's important to have that, like I said, build that network and put yourself out there. And again, leverage all the tools that you have to build that brand, right? Um, and I have a few more points to that, like, tips, right? Like what else can people do? Um, Highlight transferable skills, right? Emphasize skills that are relevant to a position, even if you're changing industries. Like when you like it could be someone that has been in retail, right, on the sales side, but let's say if they are moving into like an IT sales position or an account management position or anything like that, there are skills that are transferable, like, hey, I'm a people person, I am relentless, things like that. So highlighting the transferable skills is another important thing for people to consider when they are looking. Um, Other things would be demonstrating flexibility. And this is the thing that I had told you about, like, the underemploying, right? Like,
Mhm.
when you're looking for something, today's dynamic job market, like, hiring managers value people that demonstrate flexibility. Hey, you're a project manager, but we're looking for a BA that can morph into a project management. Right now, we have a BA need, but that can morph into a project manager position. Would you be okay with it? Yeah, you know what? And again, it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to do it. Can I take this up? Will it help me? Like, get me out of my current situation of not having an employment, and
Mm.
and Aurora, it's noted that, you will land a job faster when you are looking for a job, where when you're employed. Did I make sense there? I think I like
Yeah,
went
I
in a
know.
circle
I
there.
always
When
find
you're
that it's so
employed,
unfair.
yes,
It's
it
so
is
unfair,
unfair.
but
It is
it's true.
unfair,
But it's true,
but
yeah.
it's true. Exactly. So, so hey, stopgap. I'm okay with, because hiring managers are like, more willing to say, okay, this person is actually currently working and contributing to, let's say, a project, like, a project life cycle. So he or she can bring that immediately transferable skills to my current opportunity, right? And step up. So that's the take, I think. Unfair, but that's pretty much the way it is. Upskilling and learning is also important. Investing in, in your professional development, acquiring certifications. So let's say it's a network engineer position, right? And more than often, if 8 out of the 10 jobs that you look at are asking for certification, then guess what? You need to get a certification.
Mm,
That
mm,
seems to be the norm, right?
mm,
Oh no, I don't need certification. I didn't have time for it. I'm sorry. But now, because you're looking for a job, that is the way it is. Unfortunately, a lot of the hiring managers, if there are like 4 resumes, right, and all of the resumes are just names, like, A, B, C, D. And if A, B, and C have certifications, which means that you have the standards, you have the basic necessary qualifications for the opportunity, then I'm going to take a chance with candidate D who doesn't have it. Yeah, of course, you have the years of experience to showcase for it, but again, goes back to the point, like, unless your experience comes with like recommendations, you have like stellar 7 8 hiring manager previous manager recommendations, then yes, guess what, the certification doesn't matter. You have a brilliantly written resume, you have a fantastic LinkedIn, you have amazing recommendations, guess what, the certification take a back seat. But if you don't have that, that comes in a picture. So it's
yeah.
all like a culmination of things.
Yeah, I would have played the devil's advocate there. No, I think it's a really good point, and also that's where you have to know where you want to put your time and investment, right? That if you're not gonna play the certification game, then you have to be competitive in some other way, or you have to find the
Value add.
employer that is like, yeah, I don't care about certifications. Like, so there's always like that. I think one thing that I've learned with experience is that we take things way too personally. Like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of this stuff is not as personal as you think. Like
Right.
people are just more concerned about their own company, their own thing. They're more like worried about them getting in trouble, not having the amount of staff or the kind of stuff they need, and
Right.
they're not thinking about you as much as you think they are. They're
Yeah.
mostly just thinking, okay, we're overworked, we need the extra team member, or like, how do we not hire somebody that after 3 months will leave, or right? It's a
Yeah.
lot more like that. It's not quite as personal as we think it is.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Like I always tell this to my candidates, like, first interview, typically it's like the mindset is, why should I hire you? Right?
Mm,
The second interview is, they're like, why should I hire you? And then, I really like you, so I'm going to give you some information as to why you should join us, right? And
mm,
the third interview, if it's still 2 steps, then the second interview or the final interview will have this third stage. So
mm.
where, okay, here's why you should join our team. And you know they're almost sold on your background. Of course, you still have to put up your best front and show how aligned you are, but that's the typical phase of interviewing. Um, Another very important thing, tip for people that are looking is following up, right? Like,
Mm.
after interviews, follow up, write a thank you note. Not many people do it. So guess what? You're going to stand out. If there are like four people that have interviewed, you probably will be the only one that has actually taken the time to say, hey, thank you so much for meeting me today. I enjoyed speaking with you. You don't have to go like, it doesn't have to be like 3, 8 paragraphs. It could be as simple as, I love talking with you. I think and again, bring out the most important points from the interviews, your takeaway points, right? Like, I noticed that you have this challenge. I appreciate you sharing that with me. And I think I'd be able to impact it, and be able to work with your team and bring this to the team, things like that, right? Like, so you again make a lasting impact. So following up with a recruiter, following up with the company that you interviewed for, very important. People don't do it often. And
Mm.
recruiters don't have the time. Typically, I mean, I do. Like, if I'm not slammed the entire day, I'm like, hey, do you have like a minute to send me the thank you note? Or sometimes I'm like, you know what? I just wrote a thank you on your behalf. Would
Oh.
you approve of this, right? But I can't add the specifics. I can make it as generic, as fluffy as possible, saying, thank
Mm.
you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to joining your team. The end, thank you. But that's not going to be as impactful as it would be if you wrote it yourself, saying, this is why you need to hire me, right? So that's another thing. And then seeking feedback, right? Like, I encourage my candidates to ask this question during an interview. Um, thank you so much for your time to interview for interviewing me today. Do you feel like um, are there any skills that you would like for me to have ready or know by the time this opportunity starts? Or do you feel like I have everything that is ideally needed for this opportunity? You know? Things like that, just making sure you, and of course, I mean, sometimes, the managers may or may not answer that question, right? But, it's good. Yeah, if you don't ask, you won't know. So ask, what's the point, right? Um, and then obviously following up with your mentors, your people that you've worked with, say, hey, do you have any input for me? How can I change? Things like that. That's an important thing. And then I think the most important one, the most, and this, I promise I'll stop speaking after this because I know I've gone on a monologue here. But the most
No, no,
important
I
thing
love
is
it. I love it. We want all the tips.
staying positive and persistent, right? Um, Job searching can be like challenging, a mental stress, right? And especially if you're working, right? You're currently working and you're juggling interviews and managing deadlines and stuff. It can be a lot of stress, right? So take a deep breath, go easy on yourself, right? Like, you don't have to say, okay, I'm going to apply. Like you said, don't apply for like 800 opportunities and have 800 interviews. I'm just saying 800 is a random number, but you get the point. And I do think a lot of times I appreciate candidates that say, you know what, I'm only entertaining 3 of these positions right now, this one and 2 others, just so I can give it my 100%, right? You don't want to be juggling so many interviews that you don't know what to do. And you can keep interviewing. There's no perfect job. What's the whole point? What are you trying to achieve? If after 3, it's like dating. You can keep dating. But if you really don't want to find that one, then it's not gonna happen, right? You got to put a stop to it sometime. But so keep at it, maintain a positive attitude, stay the course, stay persistent, follow up, celebrating smaller victories, right? Hey, great, I have 3 interviews scheduled, so I'm gonna work on it. Like, celebrating those little milestones, and then staying the course and not getting I mean, not feeling rejected after, hearing a no. It's important. Like, I understand, but it's not the job, or it's probably not you, it's the job, right? It's not meant to be.
I want to add one tip to all the amazing tips you gave because it goes a little bit also with your dating analogy, which is it's a two-way street. And I
Yes.
think this is the thing that sometimes I've seen that people, um, they feel the pressure that they want something else, and then they forget that, well, but it has to be a match for you as well, which means
Hmm.
during the whole process, you have to find out about them. During the
Yes. Oh
interview,
my God, I
right? You
can
have to ask about them.
totally.
Like it's not a the to me this is one thing that many years ago when I was an employee, made me a good interviewer, a good interviewee, actually, is that I really did not go with the attitude of like, okay, I'm gonna pretend I'm what they want me to be so I get the job. I think that's a really bad
100%.
strategy, like bad worst case scenario, they pick up on you not being genuine and they won't trust you. But
Yeah.
less no best case scenario, which is still a horrible scenario, is that you pretended to be somebody else and then you get the job and then you don't like it because
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
did
I
not hire
agree.
you for you, right?
I agree.
So you have to show up like yourself, like
Yeah.
do your research, of
Yeah.
course, be on your best behavior, like give good answers, do all that stuff, but be yourself. Don't be
Yes.
afraid of being yourself, because if they don't like you, or they have an issue with whatever, like, okay, good riddance. That's what the interview is for.
Is for
It's
exactly. It
for.
cannot, my favorite take on that is round, you cannot have it as round hole and a square peg.
Hmm.
Doesn't work. You got to have a
Hmm.
round ball, you
Yeah,
can't, or a round peg, whatever.
yeah, but
But
also,
it cannot
yeah,
be a mismatch. It has to align.
yeah. But also, what I discovered in that process is that when you show up as yourself, there's a certain confidence that if the skills are there, if other things are there, it's very attractive. You like somebody who shows up in an interview and they're confident enough to be themselves, and they're relaxed and they're curious about, what the company is about and so forth. Like it will really give you a sense like, wow, this person must know what they're doing, and like it's a really attractive thing in a job candidate. And not many people show up with that because, again, and I understand this, like you get caught up in the fear and the pressure and all that, and then but paradoxically,
Yeah.
if you instead stay in who you are, and of course in what you can contribute and all that kind of stuff, you have a much better chance. That's what I
Yeah,
really
I
see.
agree. I agree because people, like I said, people want to work with people that they align with, right?
Yeah.
So that's
Okay, all right.
the bottom line.
So many things more, but okay, I want to ask you one question because I've been asking everyone, so you as well. So, um, a lot of my work is based on, this belief or this value that we all have innate inner wisdom that is really meant for us individually to guide us, right, in life. And I'm curious, what's your take on the whole inner wisdom thing? Have you experienced it in your own life,
Well, if
Tell
you
me.
ask my husband or my daughter, they'll be like, "What wisdom? What wisdom?"
Oh
But but um I don't know. I mean, it depends on the situation, but most of the times, um, and I think it's very apt to what we've been talking as well, is if it's meant to be, it will be, right?
no.
If you are looking for that amazing that you put, you go after that amazing job interview, and unfortunately you don't get it, it could be a blessing. There could be something else waiting for you, just like few calls away, right? So, and I know people say this all the time, but it's actually the fact. Like, I mean, my current job, I got after I got rejected from another company, right? Like, um, and I'm like so thankful that I did not get that job. And I was very heartbroken when that happened to me. But then it's been like, I want to say 16 plus years with K Force. And, I couldn't be happier, right? Like it happens for a reason. Whatever happens, happens for a reason, right? So for me, I always think that, don't be, I mean, this is just nothing. Que sera, sera, right? Like I love that song. So it is what it is.
Wow. All right. I want to share, since we talked about LinkedIn recommendation. I actually when I read, can I read one of your reviews
Oh my gosh.
for Alice?
Sure.
I love this one. It says Mala is a true asset to the organization she works for. She always makes sure her clients are getting the best of their skills, and that's what sets her apart from all the other recruiters. She's passionate about helping people, and you can always count on her at any time to bail you out of trouble. I mean, what an amazing thing. Mala never wears you down with the whole recruiting process and takes time to answer all your questions, and she's genuinely interested in the welfare of the people whom she works with. Oh, I love
Oh,
that.
thank you. I don't know, I don't remember who wrote it, but thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. So, how can people reach out to you or learn more about you or, you know?
I am reachable. That's my job. So I'm out there. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. My contact information is actually in my bio. If you scroll all the way down after the whole paragraph of what I do and what I don't, you'll see it right there. I have my email information and my direct dial information right there. And yeah, I'm ready to connect whenever you are.
All right, great. I am going to put the link to your LinkedIn profile, of course,
Oh,
in
thank you
the
so much.
description of the episode. And for everybody else, my name is Aurora Meneghello. You can learn more about what I do at repurposeyourpurpose.com. Thank you so much, Mala. It was so great talking to you today.
Thank you so much, Aurora. And I have to add that, I love the title of your podcast. It's it resonates with me at so many levels. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful title. Repurpose your purpose. I think it's so apt. So I wish you the absolute best. I wish the podcast the absolute best. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.